come closer a little bit.
Yeah, we're just waiting for the mic to get set up. Okay, we're ready.
Hang on a second.
And if you could just step closer to us, towards our
Closer to
microphone.
the microphone.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we can hear you.
دليل كوني قريب.
Got you good?
الصورة حلوة.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm ready.
Testing, we're good? Bill?
Yeah.
Good to go? Good morning, everyone. We thank you for coming out today. My name is Lamis Sadiq. I am a Palestinian. I am an attorney based in New York, and I am with both the National Lawyers Guild, Al-Auda, the Palestine Right to Return Coalition, the Palestinian Assembly for Liberation, and the New York for Palestine Coalition. Many of the Palestinians that you will hear from today are feeling things that we cannot process or understand. Our trauma is inexplicable and unbearable, and we ask you to give mercy and kindness to all of the speakers today. I am born in and grew up in Hawara, Palestine, the name of a town which many of you have become familiar with because it has been burned countless times since February of this year and countless times before it made the news in February of this year. Saturday morning, on the eve of the Gaza ghetto uprising, my cousin was murdered and we canceled an engagement party. We cannot count how many of our relatives have been killed in the West Bank. You have also not counted the 200 Palestinians that were murdered before the Gaza ghetto uprising. We ask that you contextualize the Palestinian people's suffering and their breaking free from the Gaza ghetto cage, where for 17 years they have been placed on a starvation diet, where for 17 years they have been massacred to your applause. We ask that you stop slandering Palestinians with blood libel. The media and the mayor's office and the president's office has issued false, admittedly false statements about what Palestinians have not done. Statements so false, even the Israeli government has denied them. And then all of you, like you always do, then issue fine print retractions when it is too late. And it is too late. Right now, 2.3 million Palestinians, if you can imagine and have an ounce of humanity, are facing their third day without water. I repeat, they are being massacred and bleeding and are on their third day without water. Which sort of war is it between two people when one side cannot even control their water, their food, their electricity, their internet, their entry, their exit, when one side has weapons that are made from leftover Israeli bombs that were rained on them to try to survive? How many Gandhis and Anne Franks have been shot down marching peacefully, trying to free themselves from the Gaza ghetto that this country and the Israeli government have made of what was once our lush and wealthy land? We have called for this press conference because all of you respectfully have erased us. All of you have taken photos of Gaza and Palestinian children being slaughtered and put the title of Israeli trauma on them. None of you have acknowledged the massacre that is happening, the genocide that is happening right now. And I'm going to read for you the legal definition of genocide under the Rome Statute and the UN Convention right now, so that you understand we are facing textbook genocide, and all of you who are mobilizing and inciting violence are perpetuating and helping this happen in real time. Article 2 of the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide stipulates the following acts are genocide if they were done with the intent to destroy a whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group by, number one, killing members of the group, number two, causing serious bodily or mental harm to those members, three, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring members of the group. I have articulated to you the context, not just for 17 years, but for 75 years. I also want to lay blame and make clear that each and every one of you in the media, in the mayor's office, in the federal government, who has made these claims, has caused and mobilized an inexplicable and unrecorded violence against Palestinians across the U.S. Palestinians in Brooklyn were brutally beaten by a group of 14 Israelis 2 days ago. On our campuses, students are being physically attacked and threatened and per se defamed with false criminal allegations. And you and the U.S. government and the West, because the rest of the world is with us, have carried this out and perpetuated these false claims and endangered Palestinians and people of conscience everywhere based on false allegations that erase the colonization of Palestine since 1948. And if you don't believe us, ask the Israelis, whose testimony is all over the internet, who admitted to the ways in which they have burned our people when they landed on our shores. We did not go anywhere to kill anybody. They came, they burned us and our children in ovens. Hear their testimony. They raped our teenage girls. Hear their testimony. They slaughtered Palestinians in mass. Hear the testimony of the Israeli generals. Hear them admit to their genocide. On that note, we challenge you to publish the truth. And if you will not publish the truth, and if you will not give context, and if you will not stop slandering and defaming us, we assure you we intend to take legal action inside the U.S. and outside of the U.S. for each individual who engages in these defamatory and libelous claims. On that note, it's my honor to introduce Luna Martinez, who will be speaking on behalf of the National Lawyers Guild.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Luna. I am the co-chair of the Palestine Subcommittee of the National Lawyers Guild. My other co-chair, friend, and comrade could not be here today. Last night, the Palestinian civil defense crews pulled out at least 18 bodies in the Al-Saftawi area of Gaza. They were her in-laws' family home. They were targeted and hit by Israeli occupation warplanes without any warning. I mention this first to honor their lives and acknowledge their murders. May they be granted in death the peace and justice they did not get in this life. Second, I mention it because we are tired of seeing Palestinian death returned into an abstraction, a number on a screen, a passive verb. I want to open my statement by reminding you that genocide is real and it is happening to people you know. I am here in my capacity as a member of the National Lawyers Guild. The National Lawyers Guild is a progressive bar association with a mission to value people over profit. We are a collective of radical lawyers, legal workers, and law students who for the past 85 years have been devoted to supporting human rights and national liberation here in the U.S. and internationally. Today, the NLG stands firmly in solidarity with organizers across the country and with people of conscience across the world who are raising their voices, placards, and fists to demand a free Palestine, free of occupation, colonization, and apartheid. In our long history as the first integrated bar association in the U.S. and one of the most unwavering defenders of civil rights and constitutional rights, we have often found ourselves stating opinions unpopular to the status quo or defending those who are maligned by the general public. From defending victims of political repression during the McCarthy era to standing with the civil rights struggle of the 1960s and from the Native American Indian movement resisting corporate capture to the movement for Black lives calling for prison abolition, the NLG has been steadfast in its support for progressive social change. With the 2020 of hindsight, our society has come to understand positions that were once controversial and alienating as principled. Today, however, I'm here to talk about something that's not controversial. I'm here to talk about genocide, something that should be anything but controversial. 2 weeks ago, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu showed a map of the new Middle East, where he removed Palestine and called it a blessing. After a surprise attack from a number of Palestinian resistance groups, not just Hamas, Israel cut off all power, water, food imports, and gas into Gaza as a form of collective punishment. As a reminder, Gaza's population is made up of 80% refugees and 50% children under the age of 18. That's over 1 million children under the age of 18. The Israeli Defense Minister said there will be no electricity, no food, no fuel, everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we act accordingly. 3 days ago, Israel bombed the crossing between Gaza and Egypt, effectively sealing the fate of the 2.3 million Palestinians living there. Just last night, Israel announced to the UN that it plans to evacuate 1.1 million people to the southern part of Gaza as its campaign of full extermination settles in. With thousands dead, millions demand answers. Genocide is real, and it's happening to people you know. We find ourselves at a juncture in history that will serve as a litmus test of our collective moral compass. Instead of calling for an immediate stop to the impending genocide of the Palestinians trapped in Gaza by a merciless regime bent on erasing their existence, policymakers, the media, and politicians are stoking hatred by calling for revenge. Today's climate of knee-jerk support for military aggression is all too reminiscent of the racist and Islamophobic discourse that helped justify the illegal invasion of Iraq, the ongoing indefinite detentions at Guantanamo, the ubiquitous surveillance of Muslim communities and places of worship here in New York, and the murder of over 1 million Iraqis. The early days of the so-called war on terror led to an all-out assault on freedom of speech, assembly, and press, where those who dared to speak against the war were labeled as terrorist sympathizers. We refuse to allow the same kind of witch hunt against Palestinian solidarity activists. The popular mobilizations in support of Palestinian freedom are under vicious attack today, with repression reaching an unprecedented level of desperation and vitriol. Those who demand justice in Palestine are met with more than critique. They are being met with surveillance, harassment, and threats of death. This week alone, we have documented dozens of vicious attacks against advocates. 2 nights ago, a Muslim student at Baruch was harassed and threatened in their own apartment because they hung a Palestinian flag. Yesterday, a Black Columbia student was arrested in Harlem because he was postering around the city. At UCLA, a student had a knife pulled out on them. And at Harvard, there's a massive doxing campaign with spreadsheets and trucks sharing the personal details of students. Instead of reaffirming the freedom of speech of advocates, a council member here in New York attended a Brooklyn College rally to monitor Palestine supporters who were carrying a gun in her waistband. These are but a handful of examples of the ongoing attempts to punish expressive conduct, to criminalize the voice for justice, and to put advocacy on certain issues beyond the pale. The NLG is aware of the role that you, the mainstream media, elite institutions, and other centers of powers have played to promote Western war propaganda and discredit opposition. We call on mainstream media to maintain basic standards of journalistic integrity and professionalism by reporting the facts, if not impartially, at the very least truthfully. We call for an immediate lift of the blockade on Gaza and an end to the genocide of its captive population. And we remain prepared to provide legal resources and defense if we are called upon by our comrades on the streets. May we live to see a liberated Palestine.
Thank you, Luna. I just want to remind people that we do have a decently sized speakers list. We will be taking questions and answers at the end of this, so please stick around. Our next speaker is Manolo de los Santos from the People's Forum.
Good morning. My name is Manolo de los Santos. I'm with the People's Forum, a progressive space and cultural institution in the city that works with hundreds of organizations, social movements, community groups, and we firmly stand for peace and justice. But we understand that to stand for peace and justice means to stand with the Palestinian people at this moment. We joined the call to organize a rally last week on Sunday in solidarity with the Palestinian people, which was unfairly and recklessly attacked by the governor of the state of New York, by the mayor, and many elected officials who sought in their attacks to limit our freedom and our right to rally and to protest. They sought to limit our right to mobilize on what we believe is correct and just. And they have incited violence against our activities. Today we are joining a rally, another one in Times Square at 3 p.m. because we defend the right of the Palestinian people to break out of the jail, the open-air prison that is Gaza right now. We stand with the Palestinian people because they have always historically stood with black people in this country, with immigrant people in this country, with all of the oppressed in the world. We have no remorse. We have no regrets. We have no doubt about why we stand with Palestine. Because to stand with Israel at this point is to only side with exploitation. To side with Israel is to side with genocide. How many more war crimes must we witness before we wake up to reality? How many more acts of extermination must we witness against the Palestinian people for us to realize what is the right side of history? We feel very strongly at the People's Forum that in this great time of crisis, of war, in which we regret the loss of life, to only speak of Palestinian violence is not only a joke, but is a cruel way of looking at what is happening to us today. We encourage New Yorkers who stand with justice, who stand for peace, New Yorkers who fight for civil rights, New Yorkers who believe that all people have a right to defend themselves, to organize, to rally and to protest, to join us today in Times Square, to join on the side of justice. And I do not want to finish speaking to you here today without saying that one of our major aims in our continuing mobilizations is that the United States government must end its aid to Israel. $3.8 billion of taxpayer money that go every day towards the occupation and apartheid system against the Palestinian people. Not in our conscience, not with our dollars. We refuse this aid and solidarity that the United States government is giving to such a cruel and inhumane system. We reject all attempts to normalize what is today a major war crime, internationally recognized by holding a total blockade against the people of Gaza. Again, we ask you to join us today at 3 p.m. in Times Square, where you will see thousands of New Yorkers who stand for justice, who stand for peace, because that's what it means to stand with the Palestinian people.
Thank you, Manolo. Our next speaker is Kalim Hawa from the Palestinian Youth Movement.
Good morning. The people of Gaza are the most courageous and beautiful people in the world. We and the Palestinian movement helped to organize the protest last Sunday at Times Square, and we are helping to organize the protest today. And the purpose of these protests, which will be the largest that New York City has seen in recent memory, will be to send a clear message to the world that the people of New York stand with Palestine and stand with the people of Gaza. What we are currently seeing in Gaza right now is 2.4 million Palestinians who are being held hostage by Zionism. They are martyring thousands with impunity. All crossings are closed. the Zionists are indiscriminately bombing and using internationally prohibited weapons against the Palestinian people. Hospitals have become mass graves and are being targeted by the Zionists in order to inflict maximum civilian damage and to cause massive civilian harm to the Palestinian people. There is no water, there is no electricity. Mass arrests of Palestinians all across Palestine are adding to the hundreds of administrative detainees who are held without charge in Israeli prisons. Ultimately, these people are being targeted, and because the people of Gaza are the heart of Palestinian resistance, entire families are being wiped out. We know of at least 15 families that have been reported as being completely wiped out. And this is probably 5% of what is truly happening in Gaza because of the media blackout, because of the electrical outages, and because of the complicity of American and Western media in the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people. All this being said, we do not want to use abstractions to discuss what is happening in Gaza. Every story here is one of resistance and of beauty and an ordinary life. But to do proper justice to that, you'd have to give me a lifetime. In the face of all of this, we can say with certainty that the Palestinian people are unbound. No amount of collective punishment by the Zionist entity will bend or break the will of our people. We know why Gaza is being targeted. It is because, again, it is the heart of the Palestinian resistance and the Arab resistance to Western imperialism. First and foremost, the priority for anyone inside the West is, and inside the imperial core, is to end the drumbeat to genocide. This reflects a need articulated to us by the Palestinian people of Gaza for the bombing campaign to stop, the blockade to end once and for all, and for humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. But also, and more broadly, what we are calling on the people of New York who wish to be in solidarity with the Palestinian people is three things. First, struggle through organizations and your workplaces and your friends and in the streets to demand an end to both the current genocidal campaign and for an end to the system of settler colonialism that has strangulated Palestine for the last century. Second, demand sanctions against Israel and Zionism. No more weapons, no more money, no more cultural and institutional cover. We would like to see anti-normalization of a Zionism that has shown its face to the world once again. Finally, understand that Palestinian armed resistance is fundamentally just and a means of survival for our people. I want to talk now about the U.S. government for a moment. What we are seeing is a totally unsurprising development. Palestinians and Arabs have long understood that there is a false distinction to be made between Western imperialism and Zionism. At their base, the two fundamentally seek the same thing: the extraction of Arab land and labor and the elimination of a Palestinian population. Secretary Blinken, visiting the Philadelphia-born Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, while he is initiating a genocide of the Palestinian people, is an affirmation of total U.S. support. The Western response has been military and economic carte blanche and a machine that works around the clock to manufacture consent for genocide. Nikki Haley says Netanyahu should finish them all. Students and activists in this city are being rounded up from the streets and campuses for their brave defenses of the Palestinians. Germany is leading mass arrest campaigns seeking to ban Palestinian prisoners and the Palestinian prisoners movement from their country. England and France are seeking to ban symbols of Palestinian solidarity. The purpose of these statements and these actions is to signal that the West gives its full and unwavering support to the genocide being led by Zionism with total impunity at the moment. Finally, to the media. Your programs give cover to this. They render us savage and killable. The world is watching and will remember what you did to Palestine just as you did to Iraq. We demand local and national news outlets commit to honest reporting on Gaza that does not include racism and effacement and that does not manufacture consent for the genocide of the people of Gaza. And we will not forget. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Kareem. Is this microphone loud enough, Bill? How loud am I? I want to address the Israeli because this reminds me of my family watching Israelis, quite a good number of them, unfortunately, from the US, dance and sing like this in my town as they were burning it in the middle of the night. This is exactly what we have been dealing with, what respectfully you have not exposed, of how they dance and celebrate the murder of Palestinians as they pogrom us in Gaza, in Hawara, in Al-Quds. As a Palestinian born under Israeli machine guns, of watching my father and older brothers tortured, we then had to deal with Israelis like this, celebrating and dancing as our people are murdered. On this note, I introduce to you Omar Jaman from CARE, New York, who is also a lawyer.
Assalamu alaikum. Greetings and peace. My name is Omar Jamal, and I'm a board member of the New York chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, known as CARE New York. We are a Muslim-led civil rights organization fighting against Islamophobia and massive discrimination our community experiences daily. Today, I stand as a Palestinian American along with community members and allies fighting to uphold and practice our constitutionally protected right to assemble in solidarity with Palestinian people who seek liberation and an end to the decades-long violence perpetrated against them. In these past few days, we have seen a concerted and powerful effort to silence anyone who dares to express solidarity. While this effort is not new, it has been fierce. Politicians, educators, employers, and many media outlets have created an environment that threatens our freedom to assemble to protest, our freedom to boycott, our freedom to speak on political viewpoints in public and in private forums. Additionally, the intentionally dishonest narratives that frame self-defense and resistance to apartheid and genocide as terrorism have recklessly increased hostility, discrimination, hatred, and even physical danger, targeting those who dare to offer a counter-narrative. Muslims, Palestinians, Arabs, and vocal allies are being threatened, fired from jobs, bullied at schools, and even attacked in the street. Our community members have told us that the reckless and dangerous rhetoric of the politicians has created an Islamophobic environment we experienced post 9/11. The politicians who ranted against Trump have recreated the very same incitement, resulting in hate crimes and discrimination targeting our community. We call upon elected servants to stop inflaming hatred to win political points. We call upon people with public voices to defy the silencing tactics by bravely insisting upon truth. We call upon citizens to uphold everyone's constitutional rights and to hold accountable those who threaten these rights. We call upon schools and employers to honestly enforce policies of inclusion and diversity. And we call upon our own community to remain steadfast and courageous in the pursuit to end oppression wherever it is found, locally and abroad. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. We want to take a moment to note that we reject and condemn all allegations of anti-Semitism, not just against us in New York, but also against Palestinians. In the words of the great Palestinian author and poet Muhammad al-Qurd of Sheikh Jarrah, Jerusalem, Palestine, it is not our fault, and we did not choose that it be people who call themselves Jewish that came to colonize our lands. Our resistance, our self-defense, Our programs would be the same had it been the British who were there before, and we rose up against the British as well. On that note, we have worked with, in solidarity in Palestine and across the world, Jewish allies who condemn the notion that Zionists and Israelis can co-opt their identity and religion. And we invite Rabbi Weiss from Naturai Karta to speak.
With the help of the Almighty, I pray to the Almighty to give me the proper words that we may sanctify His name and, inshallah, bring peace to the world. We are here at the somber time, the time when there is so much bloodshed seen by the world, a shock. Rivers of blood that we didn't see, that was pouring, that was first trickling and then pouring down for 75 years and more. 75 years was the establishment of the state of Israel, but there was Zionism that came up to the Holy Land, started well before. This river of blood was of Palestinian blood, Arab Palestinian blood, and mind you, of Jewish blood. Today we saw this manifestation, this tremendous shock of Jewish children being killed, but we still do not talk about the terrible calamity, this tragedy, this Nakba, the people of Palestine. It doesn't seem that it hurts as much. I want to show you a picture, how we live together, Jews and Muslims. This is the narrative, how we lived together for hundreds and hundreds of years in every Arab land, in peace and harmony, including under the Ottoman Empire in Palestine. The difference of religion, the distinct difference of religion is not the cause of animosity. We babysat each other's children. We were helping each other. We lived in the same courtyards. We respected each other as distinguished, as great people. And today we're here in New York City in front of City Hall, and we were told that they're mobilizing all the police force. Nobody has vacation because it's a tremendous danger, because Palestinians are going to be standing up and crying for their dead children, for the people who are being killed in Gaza. So all of a sudden there is this panic, this fear-mongering, that we should be afraid of these respectable, beautiful people, the people of Palestine. How tragic, how terrible, how unacceptable is this? We lived in peace, and this is simply a ploy of Zionism in order to further their support, that people psychologically should support them, and to demonize and to put out of the congregation of humanity into animals, the people of Palestine. That's what it's all about, and that is what's being done for 75 years at least. We as Jews are required because we are Jews, and because we were embraced by the people of Palestine, of Palestine, and the Arab and Muslim countries when we were being slaughtered by the Crusades and Inquisition, and throughout the world for so many years, and we were taken in and we flourished in the Arab and Muslim countries without any human rights groups to protect us. What changed? There's one thing that changed, an introduction of Zionism into Palestine. How could anybody with logic ignore the facts of history and just buy into what Zionism and dance lockstep with what the Zionists say, and by demonizing the Palestinians, vilifying the victims? Because we are Jews, we are crying to you. As our sign says, Israel is responsible for 75 years of tragic bloodshed of Jews, of Arabs and Jews. We have pictures. Right before they ratified the state, the chief rabbi, the true chief rabbi of the Jewish, nothing to do with the masquerade of the rabbinate, the Israeli rabbinate, but the rabbis of Eidah Haredis, the God-fearing community, pleaded 1947. We furthermore wish to oppose. to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. Jews, old men, young children are being beat every day because we demonstrated. We are standing here today to beg and plead with the world leaders and the leaders of the United States. At the gates of Gaza, there is amassed 300,000 Israeli troops, and while they are bombing and thousands are maimed, and hundreds and over thousands already are being killed, and tens of thousands are being maimed, we are pleading with you, stop, desist. You want a peace? Then remove the impediment to peace. The selfish political movement that's called Zionism, that is antithetical. Judaism is subservient to God. Zionism is a transformation to nationalism with their own narrative that is simply political. They want the land at the cost of the Palestinian people. This is unjust against God, against the Jewish women. Please hear our voice. Respect Judaism. Right across you have the Williamsburg, there's not one Israeli flag because they're extremely religious. Therefore, they're serving God and they don't accept it. We pray to God for a speedy and peaceful dismantlement of this impediment to peace, the state of Israel, so we can live together in harmony as we have for so many hundred years, and express our thankfulness to the Palestinian people. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi, for all that you do. Our next speaker will be Muhammad Tariq al-Rahman from Majlis al-Shura. Majlis al-Shura represents 80 Muslim organizations across New York.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings to you. We just want to say a few words and draw your attention to the recent comments made by our mayor. His comments and tweets, which on October 8th, regarding the protesters of Muslims in New York who protested against the occupation. And these type of comments inflame violence in our city. And that's the effect we have seen last couple of days. Muslim children in our schools, in our colleges, being attacked, being discriminated. Some places, Muslim women, their hijab is being taken off. We urge our elected officials and mayors to refrain from this type of attacks on Muslim communities and the people in New York. New York, as a community, we live together. As a community, we strive for each other. Today we are standing with the Palestinian brothers and sisters because they are suffering, they are being killed. The 75 years of the oppression is happening, and we see the result is today thousands of innocent women and children being killed. Nobody is talking about them. We urge everyone to think about it and support the freedom and justice for the Palestinian people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brother Muhammad. Up next, it's my pleasure to introduce Lillian House with the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
Good morning, everyone. We're out here in the streets today. We're not hiding. We're not ashamed. We're standing out in public because despite the bullying and despite the slander and despite the lies, we stand with Palestine. Day in and day out, the people of the United States are being shown selective images. They're being given selective narratives, all to convince us that black is white and up is down, that the oppressor is the oppressed, that Palestine is the criminal and Israel is the victim. Well, we say that we know what the truth is, and we're here to stand and with our conscience, to stand with Palestine. And in so doing, we have to stand and face vigilantes. We have to stand and face the bullying of politicians from the White House to Congress to City Hall who slander us and try to intimidate us into our homes, into cowering. But they will not intimidate us. Mayor Eric Adams has called us extremists for standing with Palestine. But what is it when you have the head of the military of Israel pledging to turn off the water on Gaza, to turn off the electricity on Gaza, to block food from Gaza, to block medicine from Gaza, to say that the Palestinians are animals and we will treat them as such? What is it to deprive them of the necessities of life as they rain down bombs and missiles on their homes and their schools and their hospitals? Is that not the real extremism? What about to fund such a project? What about $3.8 billion for such a project? Is that not extremism? Every bomb, every missile, every bullet, every crime of Israel is paid for by our tax dollars. Is that not extremism? And what about to provide cover for such a project, for such a crime? Is that not extremism? CNN, NBC, the New York Times, the New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, all of them are guilty. We know the cliche that the truth is the first casualty of war. Well, Palestine has been the victim of a war for 75 years, and it has taken a mountain of lies to cover that war. That is a crime. The media in this country, their job is to forget history. Their job is to erase context. Their job is to ignore logic. Their job is to say, where are the events from last week coming from? To imagine that they forgot the events of 2018 were in the same part of Palestine, the same part of Gaza, which today is rising up. There was a mass nonviolent protest movement, and what was the response? They were mowed down. The media are intentionally forgetting that the Palestinians have been given no options. Today calls for clarity. There are only two sides. There is one side of oppression, of genocide, of slaughter, and on the other side, there is a fight for freedom, for dignity, for humanity. We know what side we stand on. We will not be deterred. You can send all 36,000 police officers in all of New York City to intimidate us, but we will stand firmly with Palestine. Martin Luther King Jr. said that the arc of justice is long, but that it bends. The arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice, and we believe that. And we know that Palestine will continue to resist because they have no choice. And furthermore, we know that they will win, and we will stand with them all the way. Free Palestine.
Thank you, Lillian. Our final speaker before we go to question and answer is Mohiba Ahmed from Drum Desi's Rising Up and Moving.
Good morning. We at Drum Desi's Rising Up and Moving organize working class South Asian and Indo-Caribbean people in New York City. As an organization of people who have lived under colonization and fought against colonization, we know these stories. We saw it when we fought against British colonization in South Asia and in the Caribbean. We saw it in the Haitian Revolution when enslaved people fought off the French. We saw it in South Africa when indigenous Africans fought against an apartheid state. We know it here in America as indigenous people resisted colonizers and settlers. We still know it and live it as people of Kashmir fighting for self-determination against Indian occupation. It is the same story of colonizers taking over indigenous lands, forcing indigenous people into inhumane conditions, and then blaming the indigenous people when they resist. For all these reasons, we stand in solidarity with Palestinian people in their struggles for self-determination, for justice, for their land and their dignity. All life is sacred, and we are grieved by all loss of life. But if we believe that all life is sacred, then we have to resolve the root causes of the issue. We need an end to the Israeli occupation of Palestinian people and lands. We need an end to the apartheid state. We need to honor the right of return of the Palestinians to their homes. After all of this, one democratic state for all, regardless of religion or ethnicity. We also know that we, living in the United States, have a responsibility to ensure that resolution. Firstly, by seizing the funding and the support of the occupation and the apartheid state. Secondly, by our local elected officials being accountable to and representative of all their constituents. Between the one-sided media coverage and the statements of local officials, we are seeing an incredible rise in hate crimes as a result, and growing reports of civil rights violations of Arab and Muslim prisoners being questioned by law enforcement agencies. We saw the incredible harm to the Arab Muslims and the South Asian communities in the aftermath of 9/11 that lasted nearly 2 decades and now faces a resurgence. We will only go around and around in the circles of violence and of harm if we do not resolve the root cause. End the occupation, free Palestine, honor life and human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohiba, for that impassioned closing remark. I want to address the pro-Israeli protester who said, "We hope you die." Palestinians have been hearing this refrain from Israelis and their supporters since the day of our birth, wherever we've been in the world, for simply having been born on our own land, for simply resisting those who have come to our shores from all over the world to invade our homes and steal our lands and kill and torture our children, our men, and our women. We will open now for questions and answers. But before we do, I want to say this. We would never, and we imagine no one would ever have condemned the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. We would never have condemned the slave rebellions in the US and in Haiti. We would never have condemned the struggle, the freedom fighters in South Africa and Algeria. Anybody who asks us to condemn any of our people who are simply fighting to be released from a cage in which they are starved and bombed every few months is asking a question based on a racist premise, asking us to condemn the people who are already policed and massacred and starved. And I challenge you, before you ask us that question, to present to me one interview of an Israeli to whom you have posed that question. We condemn colonization and violence of all sorts. We respect all humanity, and all humanity has the right to defend itself from colonization. This is engendered under international law. War crimes engender the legally protected right to armed resistance. I repeat, war crimes under all tenets of international law, war crimes engender the right to armed resistance for the people who are suffering war crimes. It is the Palestinians who have filed in the ICC. It is Palestinians for 75 years who have begged for international legal intervention, and it is the Israelis who have refused to listen to or apply international law or subject themselves to international jurisdiction. This speaks volumes. On that note, the first media person, please state your name, your media outlet.
Yeah, my name is Christopher Leon Johnson. I'm independent on social media. My question is, yesterday, Councilwoman Ina Vertikov, who serves the 48th District in the City Council, she was arrested this morning, just for criminal possession from the Brooklyn DA's office. So I want to know, are you going to be calling for a resignation from the City Council? because she was carrying she was open carrying a gun.
Absolutely. The fact that a councilwoman who claims to represent the people of New York would issue such an insightful, not just statement, but public act where she actually pulled back her clothing to show that she was prepared, presumptively the message is to kill Palestinians and their supporters for the most valuable right that we cherish in this country, the right to freedom of speech and free and protected assembly, is an abomination, does not belong on our streets, or certainly not in our government. Thank you for apprising us of the charges. That is a relief. We do feel a little bit safer as a result.
Thank you.
I'm a citizen journalist. I just have a question. If Yasser Arafat was declared not to be a representative of the Palestinian people, Mahmoud Abbas has been declared not to be a representative to negotiate on the behalf of Palestinian people, right? Who, or if anyone, has the Palestinian people have designated as their representative to the UN or to the international community if that's no longer Yasser Arafat and it can't be Mahmoud Abbas?
Well, thank you so much for that question, because it raises several points that I think bear addressing. Number one, the majority of Palestinian political leadership have been imprisoned, abducted by Israelis and placed in Israeli dungeons where, by the way, as I'm sure many of you know, over 5,000 Palestinians languish, 97 to 99% of whom suffer torture. This is documented, including by children. Currently, perhaps people don't know that one of the reasons that the PLO mission or embassy in Washington was shut down was specifically because they filed a criminal complaint in the International Criminal Court. It's that vicious. Currently, Riyad Mansour speaks in the UN and in other countries. There are ambassadors. The U.S. has made it impossible and has kicked them out because they filed a war complaint. Keeping the embassy open in D.C. was on the condition that we don't file a war crimes complaint in the ICC. So once it was filed, they shut down. That was the condition of the waiver. Any other questions from journalists?
Yeah.
You first. Your hand has been exhausted.
Paul Rienzo from WPAI. Many American supporters of Israel have been going to Israel to participate in the fighting. Many are participating in the fighting. They're handing out guns, I'm told, on the West Bank. Are there any laws as a lawyer?
Yes.
Are there violations of laws about American citizens engaging in warfare in other countries?
Yes, there is. This is a federal law on the books. I don't recall the exact statute number and name, but it is a federally prosecutable crime for American citizens to engage in war crimes and crimes against humanity. The world en masse has declared that apartheid is happening in various parts of Palestine, clearly a genocide in Gaza. We are sure it will be prosecuted as such. Add to that, in my very hometown of Hawara, I saw numerous American citizens, one of whom was a former city official of Philadelphia, pogroming and burning Palestinian homes. Settlements pursuant to international law and an express decision by the International Court of Justice are grave breaches of international law. Grave breaches of international law means that they are war crimes. So settlements and settlers are also engaging in war crimes. We call on the U.S. and all Western governments to stop their citizens and their residents from engaging in material support to terrorism and war crimes. Thank you for raising that question. Please.
My name is Katie Honan. I'm from the news site called The City. I know this was touched upon earlier, but can you talk a little bit, or someone else can just talk a little bit about comparisons to what you're seeing now to what we saw in the days and weeks and months and years after the September 11th attacks when it comes to people who are supporters of Palestine here?
So I have the unfortunate record of having been one of the lawyers on the front lines in post 9/11 because we didn't have the wonderful legal organizations queued up and prepared, many of which grew in response to 9/11. I have to say that post 9/11, very much feels like this moment with one key difference. First of all, the fact that the media has completely erased the violence. Post 9/11, there were more reports about the physical violence that people in the US and in New York were facing in a way that's completely erased now. We don't see that by media. Post 9/11, we did have government officials step in and say, please do not hurt the Muslim community. We have not seen that. What we have seen is the opposite, which is why we call this press conference, because the danger is daily escalating. What we are seeing from government representatives, local, state, and federal, is a call for further violence using these terms and euphemisms and equating us with terrorists when we are simply on the streets working to protect and enforce and manifest our constitutionally protected rights. So we are far more isolated and more attacked now than we were post 9/11, facing the same level of violence. We did not see post 9/11 city officials carrying and brandishing weapons at rallies. This is absolutely new for us. Legal organizations have not, I repeat, have not been able to keep up. Post 9/11, we were better able to manage than we are now, even though there are more legal organizations specifically dedicated. I know my colleagues are absolutely exhausted. Thank you very much for that question.
Just one follow-up. I know it was mentioned earlier that a student at Baruch apartment was raided. If there's any more information about that, because I think sometimes we just don't know about things that are happening.
I don't have it on hand at the moment, but for anybody who wants more reports, please contact myself. CARE NLG will give you contact information. There was, for example, there was a high school superintendent issued letter to all high schools claiming that there was violence by Palestinians and Palestinian supporters, and to watch out for this. Clearly, there hasn't been a single report of this that we're aware of in all of New York. Yet this framing has placed Palestinians and their allies under the rubric, under this defamatory label of being inherently violent, without an iota of evidence or incident to indicate this. So clearly there has been this campaign in this propaganda war to defame Palestinians preemptively as the repression and violence against us increases in the city. Any more questions? We'll take one last one.
Hi, my name is Arya Sundaram. I'm a reporter with WNYC in Gothamus, a local public radio station. Can you provide more details about the protest this afternoon and what you plan to do in terms of handling counter-protesters?
Sure. So the protest will be today, 3 p.m. Times Square on Broadway between 41st and 42nd Street. We do have, this organization in particular, this coalition called New York for Palestine, I think many government agencies are relieved when they see us because we engage in very strong security measures to protect our communities, to keep everybody calm, to protect allies and protesters, even on both sides. We will have security who is trained in de-escalation tactics. We have 23 years history of protecting all people, making sure all people, friend and foe, feel safe on the streets of New York. It is our imperative, it is our goal, as much as it is our goal to let our people in Palestine who are being genocided know that we are with them. On a closing note, I want to bring people's attention to a video I woke up to this morning of this young, quite beautiful Palestinian man in his early 20s who was sending his last desperate dispatch from his cell phone telling the world to not forget them when he was murdered on his own camera, videotaping his own murder. To our Palestinian people in Gaza, in Jenin, in Nablus, in Hawara, we love you. We will not forget a single name. We will not forget a single injury. We will not let you be erased and defamed. We stand with you in resistance. We stand with you until liberation. We will call for justice for every crime and suffering you have made. We will never forget you, and we will not stand silent, not for a minute, not until your liberation. We thank you all and hope to see you today at 3 p.m.